first question was what type of photograph is shown in source A. So it is A, it's a ground level photograph. The reason why is because the photographer was standing probably about here, about the height of the car. So it's showing the bushfire from this level. If we were to look at a oblique aerial level, it would be pointing down like that. If we were looking at a vertical aerial level, it would be directly through that cloud. And infrared imagery, it would be blues and hues of blues and reds and things like that. The next one is the geographical concept. It's not biodiversity because we don't see an abundance or a range of different species going on here. Spatial exclusion is a term that we know from urban dynamics. So having areas or access to areas and freedom. So things like your gated communities. The answer is C, an ecological dimension. So an ecological dimension is something that is happening in the environment that is noteworthy. And then environmental impact assessment would be if this wasn't a bushfire, if this was maybe a controlled burn and the bushfire brigade had done filled out a bunch of forms saying that the wind's going to be in the correct area, etc. Or if they want to build on some land, then they would do an environmental impact assessment just to make sure that building in that location is not going to put any endangered species at risk or anything like that. These two are pretty straightforward, but if you get things that look a little bit not as obvious as these ones. So the answer here was C, Europe and Central Asia, so the green. But using that scale, this one here, it was 2.2, but don't go crazy round. So with here, I probably would have just, if I wasn't sure about a couple of them, I probably would have just gone, you know what, using the scale, using my ruler as well, I would have gone, okay, well, this is 8 boxes, this is 9, 10 boxes, this one here is 5, 4, and this one is 6 boxes. So I probably would have just done that as a really quick way. I obviously would have used my ruler and measured it, but I wouldn't have been sitting there going, well, that's 2.2 and that's 1, and I wouldn't have done that. Just eyeball it. So that's how we came up with this answer. And then which region had the greatest relative decline? You're probably going to go straight to this one, which was the correct answer. It was Latin America and the Caribbean. It was D. But again, just use these numbers as a quick, if you're not sure. For this one, you would go 4 times 5 million. So that area would be 20 million kilometers squared. So you could just go 6 here, 6 times 5 million, and that would be 30 million kilometers squared. So then you could work out 65% of 30 million if you weren't able to really quickly establish it. So in this one, question 5, what is this image showing you? First of all, it's pretty obvious that these are very new buildings. So hopefully you'll just instantly see urban renewal. But also they're high-rise, well, not high-rises, but they are apartments and there are shops underneath it. So they're consolidating everything into one spot. So that's why it was 5 was A. Just to go through really quickly, urban decay, this would look decrepit. So there'd be a lot of graffiti, broken windows, shops closed down, etc. Suburbanizations, you'd see sort of like Lego land. You'd see a lot of houses that look very similar that's going around and a fringe. An urban village is sort of like Shell Harbour. You kind of don't need to leave. It's all there for you in the one spot. Ex-urbanization is basically when the wealthy people leave the cities and move into more rural areas. So that could be when we're talking about people going for a tree change Counter-urbanization is just the move from urban areas to rural areas, and decentralization is a fancy way of saying urban sprawl. So it's basically when we move out of the cities, but we're still kind of close to the cities, but we need to go further out because that's where it is less expensive to live. So 5A. 6, I'm going to draw just a little compass on number 6 so that you can see it. So it's the east coast of Australia, and it was taken at 5:30. So we know 5:30, which means the sun is now over here. All right, it's in the west, so we know that that's the west because the sun is shining behind this person here, and that's why their shadow is that way. So we know that's the west, so that means that's the east. We know we've got the water, so we're looking north. So that makes this the south. And this person, although they're standing south, they are facing north in order to take the photograph. So that is why B was north. Question 7. So looking at this map here, rain fell predominantly in eastern Australia. This map does not show anything about rainfall. It's only about temperature. No temperature records were broken across Australia. There is the temperature record. Areas of Australia experienced below average temperature. There is no blue on it, which means it has to be D. Parts of Australia were experiencing some unusually high weather conditions. So you're probably looking at that orange and all of this orange here. The term geographical processes, this is spatial distribution. This is correct, a combination of physical forces. So this is that bushfire that you had in source A. This one here is involuntary migration or displacement, and this is an ecosystem. So this is B and this is D. Okay, this one probably needed you to get your little microscope out, but if you look at 377153, so I'm going to go here. So 37.7 is about here. So do a really rough line up. 1.5 is here, so 153 is probably here. All right, so if you have a look over to the, see if I can get this to pop up, I can't. If you have a look over here, it says plantation right there, and that's what these little symbols are. So that's why this is B, plantation. Try and get that to separate, I can't. Okay, well this is B, plantation. So I'm not sure why it's not letting me separate them, sorry guys. But that one's plantation. Just really quick here, just quarter it up. Okay, you can see the answer is southeast, but if you just go through really quick, northwest, not a lot of topography, not a lot of contour lines. Northeast, if you have a look, maybe there's a small section of it with some contour lines. Again, with the southwest, not a lot. It's very industrial, very residential, but all of the topography lines are happening here in the southeast quadrant. Okay, for this question here, you needed to figure out the contour interval. Now, it wasn't very obvious on this map, but it was 10 meters. When I had a look at this map, I just went to this one here to figure it out. So that's 170 when you follow it around, 180, 190, and there's 200. So I just found some that were pretty close together. So the contour lines are all representing 10 meters. So when we have a look at this one, this is 180, that's 190, and that's 190. So it's got to be here somewhere about 200 at the top of it. But because there's not another little contour line inside it as a circle inside there, we know it doesn't go as far as 210. So that's why it's this one. This is a trick question. They wanted to waste your time looking for the airfield. But the fact is, when we read latitude and longitude, north and south always have to come before east and west. So anything here that is east or west, that has got to be crossed out. So straight away, that one's gone. The next thing, so that's an east one, that's gone. The next thing, north and south, the highest you can ever get is 90 degrees. So south, 145 degrees, that's impossible. So east and west will go as high as 180 degrees. So this was a time waster to get you to look on the map for this. That's why that is B. Okay, for this one, you needed to find the golf club, which is there. You needed to have a look at the scale, which is on source E. So it was 1 to 50,000, which we know is 500 meters. So remember, there are 100 centimeters in a meter. So we know that that is 500 meters, okay? So when we do this, I would have sort of drawn it, tried to figure out that area. So this here was about 1 centimeter. That was about 1.3 centimeters. So that brings us to a 1.3 centimeter square. Okay, so 1.3 centimeters, because this is not a 1-to-1, this is a half essentially. So that's 65.65, sorry, I just paused there for a second, kilometers squared. This is the closest answer to that. All right, there is this little tiny bit here, but you've got to remember with geography, it's always the most correct answer. That tiny little bit here is not enough to make it a 1 kilometer squared space. Okay, which grid reference would experience the highest late afternoon temperatures? Again, looking back at our photo skills, we need to remember that the sun sets in the west, which means afternoon temperatures are going to be coming from the west. That's where the sun's going to be. So we're looking for the western side of a mountain. When we look at the other ones, so this is the east. This one's on a sort of the top of a ridge, so that would be quite warm during the middle of the day. This one here is on the eastern side. So looking at the one that we're looking for here, this is on the eastern side of that area. So that's why it is this one here. The local relief between the two areas, remember the local relief is the highest minus the lowest in that area. It's not, a lot of people would have just gone Mount Bernard, 489 minus the Trig Station, 219. That's not correct. Along the way, you can find this 153, which if you put in 489 minus 153, that's actually only going to come up with 326. This is still the closest answer, and the great thing about geography is it's always the best answer. But what you might not have seen is this little 147 over here. So this whole area along here is 147, that flat area where we've got a lot of the industrial sort of build-up area. That is that 147 where they're getting this number here from. All right, so which source has the largest scale? Remember, the largest scale, the largest amount of detail. There is so much detail in this one here in source J. You can see the bits of dirt between the boardwalk squares. So that's why it is J. All right, these three questions were done terribly, so we definitely need to do some more of these. But which years was the smallest change in population? So it says here, change in population, look for the smallest number. So the answer is 1996 to 2001, so 2001 here. This means they didn't have some data, and they didn't have the data prior to the 1996 one, so they wouldn't have been able to fill in this here. But they just know that they've got this data here, so that's why that one. All right, percentage change in the population, percentage change. So what we're doing to find that is we have to find out what was the population in 1996 and what was the population in 2001. So we're going to, first of all, find the number if we take one from the other. So, you know, the 2001 number was 4,612,096. The 1996 number was 3,219,026. So when we minus that, this is the difference in population. This is the actual number. To get the percentage change, the number we're looking at is 1996 number because we want to see what the change has been. So we're going to use this difference here and we're going to pop it on top of the original number. So this is the difference number, this is the original. Then we're obviously going to turn it into a percentage, so it's times by 100. We will get 43.25%. So that is why it is this one. Some people will have looked at this column and some people would have just minused them. You've got to do a percentage change. So what is that looking like? All right, the next is the annual increase in population between these 2 years. Annual increase, that means years, annual. So there have been 20 years between 2001 and 2021. So again, the 2021 population of Victoria was 6,503,491. The 2001 population here was 4,612,096. So we get this number here. That's the difference in population. But the average increase in population, so we're going with an average, so over 20 years, that's how many approximately every single year we have gone up in Victoria. So that's how we got this number, because it was 0.75, so we're rounding up. That's how we got that one. Back to this one here. So you've already actually drawn it. You've already drawn it up. Okay, so putting it on the trig station, putting it down to Mount Bernard. You don't have to draw every single, when you do this, every single contour line. That's going to drive you insane. Instead, draw the ones that are obvious. All right, so that one's obvious, that one's a 250. That one's an obvious, that is a 450, 180, 153. Make sure you get this lowest point down here. 160 to the top point. I want you to have a look at the marking criteria before I actually draw it. All right. To get the marks, you just have to make sure you've got all 4 things. So the correct shape, so that sort of tick area, you're going to see the lowest point. So make sure you mark it, the height of the finish point, and then the 219. Okay, so if we then move this across to here, all right, I'm going to pop this on here. All right, first of all, it gave you a hint in the question. It said 219 meters. So straight away we should have been able to mark it, and then we should have been able to finish it up here. We should have finished it up here because it told us 400 and what was it, 489, so it told us all that, and then we should just be able to fill it in from there. All right, this is what you should get. So you would have received 1 mark for starting at 219 here, 1 mark for ending up here at 489. Make sure you put in your lowest point, so actually write it in, 153. So 1 mark for having your lowest point. So if you had gone below this line, you would have missed out that number. So make sure you keep an eye on your key. That dent should not be there. It just got caught in a bit of wood on my table. So make sure you do this kind of thing on a piece of paper. And 1 mark for actually drawing the line. If you did not draw the line, you wouldn't have got a mark even if your dots were right. Okay, also freehand it. Please don't use a ruler. Mountains are not dead straight. But that's how you would have done this section here. For the last bit, for the question B, you had to name 2 man-made features along the line. Now, I gave you marks if you didn't use the wording in the key, if you just wrote road, but you have to use the wording in the key. All right, so make sure you have a look at the key. What does that symbol mean? Use the wording in the key, please.